This is exciting for us, you know, when teachers put on something and then people show up, it's the best. So thank you all for coming. My name is Jenny Christian. I was the chair of Farming Falmouth. I am now officially titled the farm manager. And on behalf of Farming Falmouth and our master gardeners, we welcome you. Thank you for coming. This is the first of an 8-part series. So we're trying really hard to make this robust throughout the entire growing season, and we hope you can come and grow along with us, learn as much as you can. Can I just do some participation stuff, like who's never grown anything in their lives? Okay, good, we got some fresh ones, all right. Who's been growing their whole lives? Gardens their whole lives, in one form or another? Awesome, very good.
Grass count?
Huh?
Does grass count?
No. I bet you grow great grass, though. And so there's always that middle ground, right? People with patios only have a little bit of space. We have any community gardeners from any of the Falmouth community gardens?
Quite a few.
Yes,
Yeah.
awesome. Welcome, gardeners. Are there any Emerald House gardeners? Okay.
Mostly.
All right. If you don't know Pam, raise your hand, Pam. Talk to her if you need to know anything about the Emerald House Garden.
We have a few new ones, so we definitely wanted to meet you afterwards if you like.
We have
And Pam's the one that got this first session rolling, and then we morphed it into our whole thing with Farming Falmouth. But
Yay,
Pam was the one. Pam was the one.
I love how hard you go because these guys took over and it was wonderful.
Well, I wanted to make sure it was okay. So
Yeah.
anyway.
you started us off. So there's some amazing growers in Falmouth, and we've kind of been in our little silos doing some amazing stuff. So this is really exciting because we're kind of coming together for the first time in a way that I think is going to help everybody learn more, grow more, be more involved as a community. So really happy
wanna
that
chat?
there's so many diverse people. Do we have anybody from the Marina Andrews Garden? Got a few, yay. Has anybody still looking for a garden plot in town? Okay, well, we have a new one in Woods Hole. If that's near you, I highly recommend getting on our email list, and there's some plots possibly available, so just keep on that. Happy to do that. We're trying to put one in every village so that if you don't have a yard, you have growing opportunities. And so there's some other growing opportunities I'd like to tell you about throughout the season. So this is the 8-part series where we're going to focus on education. But if you're looking for any experience or volunteer time or just want to get out and learn how to grow hands-on on a regular basis and weekends don't work for you, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's volunteer opportunities at the Farming Falmouth Service Garden, which is a garden that we grow. It's right behind Marina Andrews Garden, and it's on Andrews Farm, and everything we grow gets donated to the Service Center and Veterans Food Bank. So last year we grew 1,400 pounds that we donated on just a 1/16 of an acre, and so this year we're quadrupling that space. So the more the merrier. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, come out and join me. There's schedules there on the green if you need a reminder, but all season long, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, come garden with me. I'll answer questions. The community garden's right next door. Warren's there. She's a wealth of information. And so now I'm going to stop talking. There's an email list, though, I want you to sign up for if you want to keep in touch with these things. We'll send out reminders. We're not very spammy, so it's really like if something fun is happening in the growing Farming Falmouth world, we should do a shout. It's in this clipboard. I'll even maybe pass it around. Warren and Kathy wanted me to say that, if you have a question in the moment, and put your hand up. We're happy to take questions during the talk. We want it to feel like you're getting all the info you need in the moment, and so a few interruptions with questions on the subject are great. If you have some you can save to the end, that's also great. We've made it so that we can do the talk till about 11:30, take a little break, and then if you can stay with all your questions. You got experts here to ask, so let's take advantage of us. And then we're going to have that sort of throughout the whole session, is where you can come at the beginning, get the meat and potatoes, stay with your questions. I hope people will start bringing their plant leaves that are questionable, maybe a bug you've trapped that you want to identify. Like, let's build this community of learners and like feel like you can ask us questions. I think that's my goal with this, and like just making you guys feel like you got the tools to grow like pros is hopefully what the sessions end with. Let you guys introduce yourselves, because I always botch that. So Warren and Kathy are going to do the bulk of the teaching.
My name is Warren Collins. My husband and I, Lenny, operated a produce farm in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. It was called Wildwood Farm. It was a small sort of truck garden. It wasn't, a large, we grew on maybe half an acre with a greenhouse. We had a large greenhouse. We sold at farmers markets. I have also gardened all my life. I've also worked as a plant pathologist for a number of different agricultural companies. And I did put out field trials. So my knowledge of plant disease is pretty extensive, but I'm always learning something. And with climate change, there's always new plant diseases coming along. And I'm a gardener at the community garden at Tony Andrews Farm. So, and this is Kathy Setta, a fellow master gardener of mine. So.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a backyard vegetable gardener for most of my life. The last 45 years or so in Hatchville, so right in Falmouth. I became a master gardener in 2018, and I learned a lot more about vegetable gardening, and I'm still learning. So if you're new and you feel like, I don't know everything, don't worry, you'll never know everything. So just, every year you learn a little bit more. What I'm going to talk about today are a few topics that you can be thinking about at this time of year. A little bit about planning, a little bit about your soil testing, what you need to think about, and then a little bit about choosing seeds from catalogs. So this is a good time of year to plan. And what I do every year is I take out my garden notebook and I start writing down, what do I want to grow this year? The first rule of vegetable gardening is grow what you like to eat. There are lots of cool vegetables out there. You see them in seed catalogs, you see them in the grocery store, and you can think, ooh, I'd like to grow that. But if you don't like to eat it, it's probably not something you want to grow, because you're going to put a lot of time and effort and energy into growing it. So think first about what you really like to eat. Secondly, think about how much you want, how much produce you want. If you just want to eat fresh tomato sandwiches through the summer, plant a few tomato plants. If you want to do a lot of freezing and canning, then plant more. If you want to walk around the neighborhood passing out oversized zucchini, then plant a lot more. Okay? But think about how much of each thing you want, because most of us have limited space. If you're in one of the community gardens, you've either got 10 by 10 or 10 by 20, and you want to map out that space to produce what you want it to produce. When you're thinking about that, you want to think about the mature plant size. Seeds are small, seedlings are small, but something like squash, let's say, is going to take up about a square meter because it grows a lot. Carrots aren't going to take up much space. So you want to think about mature plant size. And if you are limited by space, you can do some succession planting. For example, peas you grow in the spring. When I pull up my peas, I plant my carrots. So you can use that same space sometimes for a couple of things. And you can also wedge smaller things in among larger things. Something like lettuce, you can plant between your tomato plants early in the season, because by the time the tomatoes get really big, it's not going to be lettuce season anymore. So there are lots of ways you can plan out your space. Okay, so that's for planning. And the nice thing about the notebook is if you plan out your space and you record what you put where, then you can keep records of how everything did. Including things like when the cucumber beetles showed up and when you need to look out for them. So being a good gardener, involves having some good note-taking skills and good observation skills. Okay, what about your soil? There's a certain amount you can tell about your soil just by looking at it. Healthy soil has a lot of organic matter, and organic matter makes soil kind of a deep brown color. So if your soil is a kind of a tan color, it's probably mostly sand around here. So you'd want to add some organic matter. The mineral part of soil is made up of sand, silt, and clay. Most of us have sandy soil, but there are pockets around the Cape of clay soil. And if you take a clump of soil when it's moist and you squeeze it in your hand, if you open your hand and it falls apart, then it's very sandy. If you open your hand and it never falls apart, then it's all clay. Ideally, it would hold together, but when you poke it, it falls apart. That means you've got a nice mixture of sand, silt, and clay. The nice thing is that all of those problems are resolved by adding organic matter. So organic matter is going to increase the water holding capacity of sandy soil. It's going to help break up the clay soil so it's more porous, and organic matter is also going to add that richness. So this is a great time of year to add some compost to your soil. What you want to do is probably add 2 or 3 inches on the surface and then rake it in to the top 2 or 3 inches of the soil. Compost doesn't have a lot of nutrient content, so it doesn't really act as a fertilizer. It acts as a soil enhancer. The microbes will live on the compost. They'll break parts of it down. That's why you want to rake it into the top bits of the soil, because you want to get it in contact with those microbes. But the top 2 or 3 inches is fine, because then, the products will filter their way down into your soil. Yep.
What kind of compost do you recommend?
Compost should be what we call finished, which means it should not have any huge chunks in it. It should be broken down enough that it's crumbly. It looks like extra rich soil. If you make compost in your own yard, you can use that. If you can buy it in bags. That's more expensive. But if you make it in your own yard, the only, most of us don't have big enough compost piles to get to a high temperature. And it's the high temperature that kills the disease organisms and the weed seeds and things like that. So you kind of have to judge whether it's fully broken down.
Is it too late to put something like a composted horsey or something paper?
The question is about horse manure. As long as it's fully composted, I wouldn't put raw anything in my garden, but it has to be fully composted. Like I said, for the temperature to get high enough to destroy disease organisms and weeds and things like that. Yep.
What about the pile of dirt that you see at the transfer station? Is that appropriate for a vegetable garden?
Yeah, the question was about the compost at the transfer station. Some people think it's great. Some people wouldn't use it because they don't know what's in it. I haven't used it in my vegetables. Has anyone used the compost from the transfer station?
I've had good luck with it.
Good luck.
I've had mushrooms.
You've had mushrooms in it. It may depend on when you get it, because, the town doesn't control what goes in there. It's seasons different times of year. But it's a great source of free compost. I've used it like for my perennials and things.
And seaweed. Seaweed is a great additive for organic matter to your garden. You can go gather it. I've never seen a law against gathering seaweed, but and it does break down. I use it first as a mulch, and then by the next year it's broken down and it's really adds organic matter. It's a great organic matter.
And it keeps the weeds out.
Yes, as the mulch, exactly. And you don't have to worry about the salt. on seaweed. I wondered about that when I first started using it, and I asked Russ. Russ is our horticultural guru at Extension. So I asked Russ, I said, so do I need to wash this because of the salt? He goes, absolutely not. So,
Do you get a lot of bugs in it though? So do you add anything to get rid of it?
well, you might get bugs, but bugs are good. A lot of bugs are good. Some bugs are not, but bugs are what help. Insects and mold and other fungi are the reason that breaks down those organic materials into the compost. So we need those things actually.
And
So.
also, I think, what comes on seaweed is adapted to living in the sea. So you're not likely to get typical garden
Yeah,
pests
good point.
imported in seaweed. Let's see, we have a lot of questions. Let's start here.
You lay down the compost, can you rototill it in?
The question was about rototilling composting. You can do that, yes. That's a whole other topic about whether you should rototill or not rototill because it breaks up the structure of the soil. A lot of people now just use something called a broad fork, or you can use a pitchfork. Maybe Jenny can show you that later in the season.
Yeah, if you come out to the garden, we're no-till over there, and we have a few cool little gadgets that are helpful for it, but we have this thing called a tilther, and I use it to incorporate compost, but it only disturbs the top 2 inches, whereas a traditional rototiller is going like 6 inches down,
Right, at least.
and the thing that's down there is a bunch of dormant weed seeds. So every time you till, you're flipping and exposing all of the microbes that she mentioned earlier that are good. You're kind of flipping them and burning them out with the sunlight. So there's 2 good reasons not to till, but it's necessary sometimes. So I'm not like a hard, fast no-tiller, but there's considerations like that. And somebody brought up the mulching with the seaweed being good for weeds, which is also just like mulch everything. Mulch everything with anything if you can get it.
Yes, the woman in the front row first, and then we'll go to you. Yep.
Do you have, does anybody have any experience with the ocean enriched compost at Mahoney's?
The Mycosamine.
I know, they make their own and it's called ocean enriched compost.
As master gardeners, we are not allowed to advocate for any one commercial product over another. So, I would ask your fellow gardeners about different products, but generally anything that a garden center sells that's, certified by, there's an organization that certifies commercial compost.
MDAR.
Okay, MDAR,
Massachusetts Department of Environmental Resources.
okay. Anything with that MDAR certification for commercial compost should be decent.
One thing I will add about rototilling, if you are going to rototill, wait until your soil is somewhat dried out. You can ruin your soil for the whole season if you rototill too early. With the structure of the soil won't ever become loamy again. It'll just be sort of like a bullet. So it may not happen here that much on the Cape because of the sand in the soil, but when we were in the Hudson Valley, we had to watch it. So.
Okay, we have another question back here.
I've turned over soil with a pitchfork.
That works just fine. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. We kind of loosen it up without completely upending it. That's turning over soil with a pitchfork. Janet?
What about using the ashes from the garden?
Ooh, I'm gonna defer to Warren.
The what?
The question about is using ashes from your fireplace. So you're burning wood and not coal.
Burning hardwood, then sometimes I'll put it in my compost and turn it in there.
Yeah, for the potash.
Yeah.
Yes, but you don't want to use too much of it. Lenny, we've mixed it in with our compost, and this is my husband here. Huh?
What kind of proportion?
What did he say? It's much less than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you've got there's certain things that need those ashes. I think that peppers like an enriched soil with potash and stuff like that. Don't quote me though, I'm not sure, I would have to look that up, but I know that yes. So you have to be careful, but yes, we've done it. And it also very much changes the pH.
Okay.
So you've gotta watch that, yeah.
Okay, were there other questions? Yes, one right here.
What about before the winter, covering the beds with leaves?
Awesome.
The question was about covering the beds with leaves before the winter. That's fine, that's a good idea.
All thumbs. Yeah.
What you can do in addition, is before you do that, go over the leaves with a lawnmower and chop them up. That will help them break down a little bit more quickly.
And they stay put better that way. You know,
Okay.
yeah, because the whole leaf's like a sail, and you can put them down, and then they're in the corner next day when you turn around, or do it right before a good rain. Sets them in place. Chopping them up is really a good idea.
Great.
So now in the spring, what do you do with the leaves? You gotta take them off, or you mulch them in?
Tell them in.
You could fill them in, or if you have a thick enough layer, you could just leave them there as your mulch. You
Yeah.
might have enough already, or you could add to it.
It always depends on the crop with me what I'm doing. So if I'm direct seeding, I like clear it aside and like kind of leave it in the walkway even. Because then once your seedlings come up, you can bring that back as mulch. So I'm going to keep harping on mulch this whole time. I don't like weeds, and protecting the soil is like number one soil health thing you can do is keep it covered. So
Did you say what kind of mulch?
leaf mulch is what we've been, this part of the session.
What?
Any mulch, so like seaweed, great.
You could use a mix of grass clippings
Mhm.
and leaves and seaweed, you know.
If
Grass
you-
clippings themselves can be kind of hot, too hot, nitrogen hot. But if you mix it in with other things, the leaves and, you know how grass clippings can get clunky and they start deteriorating. Well, that's nitrogen burning in there, and that can sometimes not be good, too much of it for your soil. But you should put grass clippings in your compost. A good compost has a lot of different things in it. And, Yeah.
So you can also use straw as mulch.
yes.
It can get expensive nowadays,
It can,
but
yes.
if you have a source of mulch, highly recommend it. I use cardboard a lot. Save those pizza boxes. Like walkways, like I'm anti-weeding. I'm a really lazy gardener, but I don't have weeds usually because I mulch heavy and I use cardboard and I heavily wood chip my pathways. And so that combination, it gives weeds a very little opportunity to find themselves and take root. And grass clippings are great for little seedlings like carrots. If you're mowing your lawn, if you know what you're putting on your lawn, if it's not poisoned, then you should use those grass clippings. But sprinkle them right away while they're wet, not too thick because they will burn. But they dry out in the sun that day, and you'll see you have this nice little, beautiful little mulched carrot row. That's, you need use what you got, I guess.
What about pine needles?
Strawberries.
Well, they add acid to the soil. So if for your you could do them for your strawberries or
Pick your crops,
pick your crop.
Blueberries, things that like acid soil. So there's so much to get into with we could go all over the place, but right plant, right place is a permaculture saying. And so if you got a corner of your yard that gets sun, but it also has a bunch of pine needles in the bottom, it's going to be acid soil. And so you want to think about what likes that. And that's what you plant there, right? Don't fight nature as much as we like to as humans. You can put stuff in the place where it's going to thrive by, looking up the soil requirements to crops. Most annuals like a sweeter soil, a little more alkaline. So
Right, but
annual vegetables we're speaking of.
rhododendrons, azaleas, some of the other native shrubs, they'd be very happy with pine needles. And like Jenny said, strawberries, blueberries, which like lower pH. And
I just want to add something about remulching, why it's so important. I think it also cuts back so much on how much you have to water.
Totally.
So in the dry
Totally,
time,
yes.
It keeps it more like, you don't have the dry and wet. It's
Right.
actually pretty even.
right,
Tomatoes
yes,
and tomatoes.
yeah, good point. Did everyone hear that? Pam said about mulching, it helps conserve water too.
Yeah, it's an important point.
And
So
less work.
Right,
I like no work gardening.
I
Yeah.
think we all like no one, yeah, yes.
Paper bags?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
There's a
And-
service center that does a lot of paper bags.
Yeah. So I mean, at the service garden, we've used paper bags as walkway. If you shingle them nicely, You know, it's all about, you know, the dyes. Just watch out for shiny, you know, cardboard, bright colored dyes. Things that don't look like it belongs in nature, don't put it in nature is usually my.
Okay, but your regular brown paper bag, would you
Totally.
shred it up,
Yeah.
you just shred it out?
Yeah.
If you have a shredder, it'd be great, you know, or just,
Or under the seaweed or the straw, like, you know, if you have a heavy, if you know you have a heavy weed pressure, if you're just starting out and you had to till, or you just know you've had an issue before, using a double mulch system is great, because as soon as you water that paper bag, it goes like leaves. It's like, it makes up for like 2 seasons of leaves, because, you know, leaves, they mat, you know, when you go into the forest and you like lift it up, and it can act like that, and then it adds organic matter as the worms go ahead and eat it. You'll be amazed. One season it'll be gone, and you'll be like, well, great. I need more paper bags.
Yeah, let's take a couple more questions and then I'll.
yeah, we probably
finish what I
gotta,
can say about
we
the
gotta
second.
move on, cause
Yeah.
then we'll do all our questions, yeah.
Straw an option?
Straw?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. As
Straw.
Jenny said, it's more expensive than using, you know, paper bags or leaves, which you have, and there's a chopped straw product now, which is particularly nice, but it's, you know, it costs maybe $17 for a.
Yeah, but if you have a small
But
garden,
it's, yeah, and
Yeah.
it-
it's
yes.
worth it.
It's worth it.
It depends on where you wanna put your resources.
You want straw, not hay, right?
Yes,
Hay has
absolutely.
seeds in it, so,
Okay, so we talked about what you can tell from your soil about just from looking at it and why it's good to add organic matter. There are other things about soil that are important, and one of them is pH. pH is the measure of how acid or basic your soil is. And most of the soil around here, our natural soil is acidic. That doesn't mean that the soil in your yard is acidic, because it depends on the history of what's happened on your property. You know, if you live in a development where they took away the natural soil and brought something in, it might be completely different. But pH is important because it determines how well the plants can take nutrients out of the soil. So you could have soil with a very good nutrient composition, but if your pH is too low or too high, the plants can't access it, and the microbes can't live healthily and help you with your soil. So pH is really important. There are different ways to measure it. You can buy kits. This is one that's based on paper squares that turn different colors depending on what's in the soil. As long as your kit is not old, hasn't been sitting around, you know, the chemicals involved are still in good condition, and you take the soil sample and prepare it as directed, these kits will give you a good idea. There are others that involve liquids. This is probably the simplest because you're not measuring and pouring. But it will get you within a half a pH unit. So vegetable plants mostly want to be between 6 and 7. And so you can test it with this, and if it comes out 6.5, well, you're good. If it comes out 7.5 or 5, then you're out of range. And if you're out of range, it's a good idea to get further testing, because what comes with further testing are recommendations. You can get a soil pH test from the county extension for free. You just have to get your sample out to West Yarmouth. You can take it there, you can mail it there, but you will get a pH analysis, and you will also get recommendations. That's the important thing. Because when you submit your soil sample, you say, you know, I'm gonna grow raspberries here, or I'm gonna grow vegetables here, and the sample, well, not sample won't come back, but results will come back telling you what to do with your soil to make it hospitable to those crops. I think you all picked up a little card that looks like this. It's green on one side and white on the other. The green side has the Master Gardener website address. That will tell you about all of our programs that we have. The white side gives you the county extension. You can get to the soil testing information from either website. I'm just going to take an aside because I meant to do this at the beginning, but make a plug for the Master Gardener organization. Our motto is helping others learn to grow. And we have a lot of programs for the public to help you with gardening. And if you go to this Master Gardener website, you'll find there are a lot of programs there set up. There's symposia, there are walks through gardens, there are all kinds of things that you might be interested in. Another thing that we do in Falmouth is from about the middle of May to the middle of September, we have Master Gardeners at the Falmouth Public Library, the main branch of the library. Inside the main entrance on Catherine Lee Bates Road, we have Master Gardeners there every afternoon from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
On Wednesdays.
On Wednesdays, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
And you can come in, you can ask us to help you identify things, you can ask us to help you solve problems, help you plan. We usually have 2 or 3 gardeners there with different areas of expertise. We have a lot of printed information.
Oh, no.
And that's, you can't miss us if you come in on a Wednesday. We're right there inside the Catherine Lee Bates entrance.
It's a really good program, and Kathy started it. She's sort of the leaders of the Master Gardeners down here in Falmouth, and it's 2 years now, right? This will be the 3rd year?
This will be the 3rd year.
Yeah, and it's really well received. I mean, we get a lot of people that come in and that ask. There's a rotating group of people that do it, and spread the word to people. It's in the, it's Wednesday afternoons at 2 o'clock. Yes, and it's right in the downstairs in the
When you come in the Catherine Lee Bates entrance, we're right there. We couldn't
right
miss
there
it.
in the hall.
And it's on the library schedule, if you ever forget when it is.
We are
Not just
packed.
vegetable gardening, all gardening.
All gardening, yes, all gardening.
All gardening.
Not just vegetables.
We had a lot of landscape questions, a lot of lawn questions, yes.
The other thing you can do if for getting your soil tested is to send a sample out to UMass. And they will give you a very detailed analysis. They'll test all of the nutrients. They test the soil for how resistant it is to changing pH. So when they make a recommendation, it's based on a little more scientific measurement. And they will tell you exactly what to use to fertilize your garden, exactly how and exactly when. So if you want a little more information, if you just started a new garden in your yard, it might be a good idea to get the full test. If you've been having, not good growth in your garden, it might be something you want to do because it might be a simple adjustment. You're adding too much of something. And on the topic of fertilizer, if you don't get a test analysis with recommendations, you should always use organic fertilizers. And you should use organic fertilizers designed for vegetables because they have the right composition of nutrients. And you should use them according to instructions. It's really important with fertilizer not to use too much because too much fertilizer is what ends up in our ponds and our waterways and pollutes them. And we all know that's been a growing problem. So, okay, let's move. Yes. If it's fully composted, it's not a balanced fertilizer really. It may have, I don't know the composition of chicken manure.
Compost.
Oh, it's great.
Really heavy on nitrogen, that's what I would think.
It's strong, very high nitrogen. Yeah, it's great.
About 2 years pile.
Okay, so the answer to that was chicken manure needs a couple of years of composting.
It's very hot. It's
It's-
very
yeah.
high nitrogen, but it's fabulous. Just don't. Chicken manure is very concentrated with nitrogen. So, and we used it. We had chickens on our farm and definitely used it. It's great. So.
Yes, question up here.
Hi, you keep saying fully composted. What else is the ingredient for that word, fully composted?
Fully composted means it's been composting for long enough that all of the organic materials are broken down so that if you looked at it, you wouldn't recognize anything in it. You wouldn't see pieces of fruit or vegetables.
banana peels.
banana peels, orange peels,
Right.
you know.
Corn cobs,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that.
Those are the things that hang in there in your compost. Corn cobs, they never, pistachio nuts, no.
Vivian?
What do you think of compost teas?
You know, it's probably
The question is
fabulous.
about compost tea.
It's probably fabulous. Any kind of liquid fertilizer that you put on to a plant, it's going to be more available than if it's solid in your soil. So compost tea, which is you water, you put the compost in and you make like a tea from it, and you use that to water. So any kind of liquid is going to get to the roots of your plant like that quicker than if you just laid fertilizer on top of the soil or something.
And
So-
there's lots of compost teas, so that you can make a compost tea out of your own compost. You can make a quick compost tea. You can make a compost tea out of weeds in your yard, and they all kind of do something different. There could be a whole session on that.
Let's write that down.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right.
We'll make sure we can talk a little bit more in depth about that sort of, because fertilizing is, you're doing it all season, especially if you have high feeders like tomatoes and peppers. They're going to
And
want
sandy soil.
and sandy soil, right? So it's helpful to fertilize foliarly throughout the season, and compost tea is a great way to do that. Bagged fertilizer, but in a commercial setting, you're aerating it. You're not just like hucking some compost in a watering can and straining it off. You kind of literally teabag it, and a lot of people, when they're doing it on a farm scale, you're bubbling it for a few days. And so what that does is it gets the bacteria kind of like jazzed up and excited, and then when you put everything on the plants, the fertilizer's there, and you've created a biological activity that's also really helpful for them. So anyway.
I think it's really beneficial for transplants. Say you're putting your tomato plants out, and you really want something available to them quickly to get them a good start. Watering in with compost tea is probably really good then, or peppers, your eggplant, any of the things you're setting out.
Yeah. I used to make one out of comfrey and nettle and horsetail, and it just sits in a 5-gallon bucket, and you stir it every day for a week, and then it's all fermenty and bubbly and kind of gross smelling, and if you strain that, it just jazzes the whole soil up, because those things are all really fast-growing weeds. They have a lot of vigor, and so you can almost extract those. Much like when we drink tea, we're kind of pouring hot water over them and extracting what's good about them. It's similar with plants. You can make some yummy plant tea.
Great, there's a question back here.
What about coffee grounds?
Coffee grounds.
Yeah, they're good.
Coffee grounds are good. They're recommended to put in your compost. I think it might be a better idea to put things like the wood ash and the coffee grounds in your compost. And let
Yes.
them all compost together rather than putting just one thing in
Yes.
your garden, because then you're only feeding it that one thing. Whereas if you, like Warren said before, if you put a lot of stuff in your compost, then you get a more balanced product from it.
Okay, we better move on from
Yes,
compost.
we're gonna skip part of it.
Although maybe we'll do a class on compost
Well,
down the line.
this is good as the first part of the series, because
Yeah.
we get to see what you guys have questions about, right?
Yeah,
And so as
yeah.
the season goes on, you're fertilizing all the time. And so the part of the series that we talked about was like, there's pests all year round, there's diseases all year round, there's certain things that we're going to hit every session. And as you're growing, you're going to have more questions, and you're going to have more, and so keep them coming, and the series is going to develop better through this sort of interaction we're
questions,
having.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. We'll
helps
see
us
what you need,
know
And you can
where-
always talk to Jenny and tell her, geez, I wish you'd do a session on blah, 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 or,
That's what I want,
so.
feedback, all the feedback.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about seeds and seed catalogs, and then Warren is gonna talk to you too. So, except for tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and onions, everything that you wanna grow can be grown from seed. Those tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, onions, they take a long, warm season to grow. So you really have to start them from seedlings. So you can either grow them from seed yourself inside your home or a greenhouse, or you can buy seedlings. You cannot plant those things successfully from seed in our climate. But pretty much everything else you can plant from seed. Some things you can only plant from seed, like carrots, let's say. You wouldn't transplant carrots. Anything where the crop is a root is likely to do best planted from seed. And there are other things you can do either way. Squash, for example, you can grow squash indoors or in a greenhouse and plant the seedling, or you can plant the seed. What you get by starting with the seedling is a jump on the season. You've got a partly grown plant put in the ground at the same time as a seed. The partly grown plant is going to do better, provided you don't plant either too early. And that's why we wanted to talk about seed catalogs today, because you can plant almost everything from seed, and there's a seed catalog offers you a lot more variety than your local nursery. And the nurseries do a good job of providing a decent variety. But there are millions, not millions, thousands of varieties out there. There's a catalog that comes from Vermont called Totally Tomatoes. It's about a 1/4 inch thick, and it's all tomato varieties. I don't prefer to use catalogs like that because it's too much choice. Where do you even begin? But things are bred for good taste, for unusual appearance. You can get purple carrots. You can get beets that are striped. You can get all kinds of colors of things. Things are bred to grow to different sizes. You have giant tomatoes. You have cherry tomatoes. You have everything in between. And things are also bred to ripen at different times. So you have early tomatoes, mid-season tomatoes, and so forth. So seed catalogs can be really fun. And we provided 2 for you today, one from Johnny's and one from Fedco. And the companies gave us these for free. It's kind of a nice combination because they're both really good catalogs, but they're really different from one another. Johnny's is almost like a textbook. If you open, they always give you kind of a philosophy on the first page, but if you open to the next page, it's got a list of symbols and abbreviations and definitions that are going to help you when you're looking through the catalog. And there's one, I know we had several new gardeners here. There's one that's highlighted in yellow that says Easy Choice. So there are nice things like that. So if you're just starting out gardening and you want some success, choose an easy choice seed, right? But it also indicates whether they've been organically produced, whether they're heirlooms, whether what their disease resistance is. Disease resistance is really important. And so that page is always a good one to refer to. I kind of like Johnny's, even though we're not, allowed to say it's better than others, but.
I can say it.
I like Johnny's. Okay.
I like Johnny's too.
They, and online they have a lot, even more information, but if you look at page 29.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
At the bottom of that page, and they do this for every vegetable, there's a big section on growing cucumbers. And it tells you how to plant them, when to plant them, how to transplant them, what kind of pests to look out for, what kind of diseases to look out for, and different resistance codes.
And there's even more info on their website about everything.
Oh, it's amazing.
And their website's unbelievable. So
it's built for farmers in a lot of ways, but
Right.
if you're a gardener, it's like you got everything you need right there on that website.
and it's
a lot of
totally
places.
reputable. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And it's employee owned, which is another reason I really like it, is everybody that really cares about what they're doing, so they're not just giving you a bunch of smoke.
I think they both are.
Yeah.
Yes, Fedco is too.
The other page I wanted to point out is 34 and 35, and they also do this for each vegetable. They have these great displays that show you what the different varieties look like. So, one picture really is worth 1,000 words. If you're looking for a small eggplant versus a large eggplant, you can look at the picture and they're all compared. So it's really designed to help you decide what you want. And unlike that Totally Tomatoes catalog, most other catalogs are curated. So, I mean, they may have, I don't know, 14 varieties of eggplant, but they don't have 100. And different catalogs will have some of the same varieties, some different, but it's nice to have a kind of a smaller selection.
And
So-
things come and go in Johnny's. If they get a better eggplant that replaces Nadia or whatever, one of their eggplants, they'll not have Nadia and they'll have their new one. And they'll say replaces or better than
Right.
or something. And so I like that. They're always improving their own things.
I'm just gonna point out one difference between the two catalogs and a little bit about seed packets, and then we're gonna go to Warren. On the second page of that handout, mine's in color, yours isn't, but I excerpted the description from Johnny's and from Fedco for the black Krim tomato, which they both have. But it gives you a sense of the personality of catalogs. Johnny says, black Krim, Russian heirloom, it combines bold, smoky flavor and good texture with an unusual appearance. A little bit more. But Fedco's, I mean, you gotta sit down when you have time and read the Fedco catalog, because it's really entertaining. Don't wait too long to harvest this delicate heirloom tomato. At half green and still firm, they're already dead ripe and perfectly delicious. If you wait till they are fully purple, you will not be able to get them from the garden to table intact. And they will disintegrate like a hunk of roadkill. And it goes on, but, they both have good seeds.
It's very folksy.
Yes, very
Yeah.
folksy. Johnny introduces this beautiful color catalog, so you're gonna pay a little more for the same seeds. Fedco is all in black and white with,
Yeah.
hand-drawn things, but so you pay a little less for the seeds.
Johnny's is more expensive.
The one last thing I just wanted to talk about is if you go to a garden center to buy your seeds, you're just picking out from the seed packets, and you won't have the variety, but you'll still get some good seeds. Or maybe someone gives you some seeds. The seed packets themselves, and this is on the bottom of that handout, have a lot of planting information, or they should anyways. What they also have that's really important is a date. Because some seeds are only good for 1 year. Others are good up to 5. And you want to know what's what. And if you're buying seeds, don't buy a pound of onion seeds if you're only planting a few, because they're not going to be good the next year. If things are stored properly, and I gave you a little list here of the most common vegetables and how long the seeds last. But that's a good thing to know. You can use old seeds. You can test them if you want before you plant them. You can get a wet paper towel and put a few seeds on it and put it in like a Ziploc baggie so that it will stay wet, and just leave it there a week or so and see how many of the seeds germinate. If none of them germinate, you probably don't want to gamble on those, but you might find that they're still fine.
What about garlic?
Oh, garlic, are you going to talk about
I'm going to talk about
Okay.
garlic, actually, yes.
So I'll just point out the chart that I think most of you either got or took a picture of. This is information I put together from seed catalogs, from extension information on average soil temperature, and from my own experience. And it's suggestions. You'll notice I titled it suggestions. It's what to plant when, or when to plant what, which you could say either way. Plus some notes, and Warren's going to talk about this more because she's going to talk about soil temperature. It's a guideline. You can plant things earlier if you want, and it might succeed.
Is that it?
But it's
Just wanna be
kind of a
outside?
guideline for best success.
Maybe
So
outside?
I'm going to let Warren talk about that more. 'cause
And-
she's gonna- yes. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be on the Farming Falmouth website. And if anybody took 2 or something, put it back, I don't know,
I will
whatever.
also leave
But
it
I
up
think-
and you can take a picture when you leave. I'll leave it right here on the table. Quite a few people took pictures of the handouts.
It's a
that
really
we
good
have.
table that Kathy put together. I saw it the other day. I said, wow, did you do this yourself? And it kind of takes everything in that I'm going to talk about into one thing, so.
Okay, so I'm done. I'll let Lauren take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so I'm
Lauren,
going to,
real quick, I'm gonna pass this around
Oh,
just
yeah,
because
yeah.
there's so many of you. We don't want you to miss the handout. So if you want the handout, make sure you're on this list. And if you're interested in the service garden emails, just put a little X on the side here, okay? If you're on our email list, pass it on.
the first thing I'm going to talk about is this part of your handout. It's the frost dates in the spring and in the fall. All right? So not only frost dates, it's temperatures also.
Yeah, we'll send it in.
So the main one in the spring you want to pay attention to is 36. The last 36 degrees. Do you see that? And this is for Falmouth. This was something I plugged in and got it for Falmouth. Because at 36 degrees you can still have a frost. People think, oh, 32 is when you have a frost. No, at 36 you can still have a frost. You don't always have a frost, but you can at 36. So when is it sort of safe to, when is your last frost date? Here, according to this. If you want to be 50%, it's May 8th. And these percentages mean your degree of assurance, of probability and insurance. They put these things together from many years of how you're going to, the average dates and things like that. So this is May 8th is 50%. I really think that, I look at the end of April here for the last frost, really. And before, too. Climate change is happening so quickly that a lot of tables like this and statistics, I think, are skewed. Because, of course, they're looking at maybe over a period of X amount of years, and I think every year it's getting skewed the other way. But the average, you see where I'm coming from there?
Yeah.
So I really think that I look at more like the end of April. Where are we now? We're soon the end of March. You can start looking at your long-term weather, and you'll see, we're not going to have too many more frosts. We just really aren't. And maybe in April we'll have a few. But anyway, so that's for frost and freezing, but something you should be aware of. On the other side is we're going to talk about soil temperature. And why is soil temperature important? Because it is truly the most scientific indicator of if the soil and the things are ready for you to start planting things. The other things that you have, tables that they make and everything, are based on averages and statistics. Using a soil temperature, a soil thermometer, which looks like this, they're not expensive. You can pick them up online. You can, I've seen them for $10. I've seen them for $11, in that range. You don't have to get a super duper one. And you put it in and you measure your soil temperature about 3 inches like this down. That's where you would put it in. Because think about it. You want the roots to be down where you want to know what the temperature is going to be down when you put your plants actually in there. So if you want to get, I would say maybe if you're a first-time gardener, don't invest in something like this, maybe. But if you've gardened a while and you want to maybe go to a little bit of a new level and really be very careful about when you put your plants in, get a soil thermometer. It's very important for tomatoes, eggplant, and peppers. And I'm going to get to that and why. So, and I took the soil, my temperature this morning. My soil temperature, I didn't use this, believe me, on myself. Anyway, so I took a temperature in my garden, and it was 45. That was the temperature of the soil. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a little warmer maybe, but it was 45. And there's not too much you can plant when the soil is 45 degrees. There are a few things, and I will get to them. But I'm going to, on this right here, talking about the soil thermometer, how do you use it? 3 in the morning, 3 consecutive days, and you take an average. So if you want to know if your soil is warm enough, come the middle of May to put your tomato plants in, you go to your garden spot and take them before the sun hits it. You don't want the sun to affect the temperature, because after a warm day, the temperature is going to be a lot more. So you want to do it in the morning and then average the 3 readings. So you want to take the soil temperature not only for your transplants, but also your seeding, when you can put certain seeds in. And things are variable because of that. Here is a guide for transplants here that I put in here. These are the things you really want to be concerned about. So you want your soil to at least be 60 degrees for your tomatoes, cucumbers, and snap beans. Can you read that? Can you see where I'm following? You want it to be 70 degrees for your peppers, watermelons, and squash. And I would put eggplant in there also. I'm a big eggplant person. So, and you can see you need it to be really warm for cantaloupe and sweet potatoes. I'm surprised at the cantaloupe, but not the sweet potatoes. We've grown sweet potatoes before, and that's why they're grown in the South, because they really like that hot temperature. So what happens if you just can't wait and you have to put your plants out? Well, your tomato plants will probably just sit there if it's too cold for them. They're just going to sit there. Where's Kathy?
Here.
You had said that a gardening expert we know said that there can be damage to the actual plant.
C.L. Fernari suggests you not
Yeah.
put them out until nighttime air temperatures are greater than 50.
Yes, or your soil temperatures that. I personally have never had any experience, and I've grown a lot of tomatoes, with them being injured by putting them out early. They're just not going to do much. Now, it's a different story with peppers. You do not want to put them out early. What you will get, if you put your peppers out, peppers have a very fine line between low and high and fruit setting and how well they're going to grow. If you put your peppers out too early, in 3 days you're going to go back and you're going to have a little Charlie Brown pepper plant. All right? Have you ever had one of those? It's going to lose its leaves. And then if you put it out and it had any buds on it already, they've dropped off, because they were like, holy mackerel, where are you putting me? I'm freezing to death. So, and will it absolutely kill it? No, but that pepper plant's not going to recover. You're not going to be happy with that pepper plant for the rest of the garden. So be very careful with your peppers and your eggplant. That is what I would say, yes.
I have a question about the tomatoes. Even though you put them out and they look like they're not doing anything, if they're mulched really well, are the roots growing more? Is there any proof
Well,
of that?
mulch also cools the soil. So mulch also, cools the soil. So, I would wait to mulch my tomatoes, not a long time, but, if it's real iffy or you're going to have a cold period or something, I don't know if I would mulch them right away.
So you would say,
But I do mulch them, but I'm just saying.
if you don't put that much mulch down, I was wondering, is there more growth going on under the soil that you don't see, or not?
Well, you hope.
They kind of just
You hope that there is, and
That's why the temperature is so important, is because those roots are just going to stay. They're like, nuh-uh, not good. No, they're just holding that pot shape that, or like, because they don't want to go out because they know it could be dangerous, right?
Exactly.
They're smarter than I don't know.
Exactly. So you
want
to
they're designed
and
proper.
think about it. You're putting your plant down pretty far down. So you want that's where you want to take your soil temperature is down there. Don't just stick your soil thermometer in a little bit on your top of your soil and say, oh, geez, it's 65 degrees. I can put my plant in. Then you put it down and, oh, geez, it's only 56 down here, you know.
Yeah.
So the dates that you get and the thing that Kathy so nicely did, she put all the data together there, you also can do it that way, all right? I'm not saying you can't say, oh, I'm not going to put my tomatoes in till Memorial Day. That's sort of a little thing. That's fine too, but the soil temperature is a more scientific way of doing it. And all of those tables are based on soil temperature, people taking soil temperatures and gathering the data. Yes?
Would it help to use a hot cap or it's not going to?
You can use a hot caps, are great. You know, does everyone know what a hot cap is? It's you don't see them as much anymore. You used to. They're like little paper hats you put over the plant, and then you can, as the tomato plant grows, you can cut a hole in the top, and then it comes out, and then you can make like a little collar around it. Hot caps are really good. I like them, but you don't. Then they definitely warm the soil, keep the soil warm. There's also something called a red mulch you can put for tomatoes. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Red mulch is supposed to be good. It helps with bud formation and warmth. Yes.
Some people put black plastic or something like that.
Yeah, you can do that. There's something else called planter's paper. That doesn't provide as much soil warming, but black plastic certainly does. Yeah, you don't want it to get too hot though. I mean, I find I've grown some things on black plastic, and sometimes, make sure they're heat-loving things, because once the summer moves on, it can get pretty warm under there. And for instance, as much as peppers like warm temperatures, if it's too warm, they won't set blossoms either. That's something I learned very recently, and peppers have this range, so.
Lauren, I have a couple things.
Yes.
One about the red plastic mulch. Garden catalogs are big on promoting it as increasing production because it reflects certain wavelengths of light up. I've used it a lot, and I haven't done it scientifically, but I haven't found a noticeable difference in
The red
tomatoes.
Oh,
whether it's
interesting.
red or
I've
whether
never
I use
used it.
straw. Makes your garden look interesting if you got these big red strips. My other comment was about hot caps and other season extenders. You have to be a little bit careful because on a warm day they can get too hot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something to be careful of it, depending on what kind of openings they have and so forth.
I was going to say also the hop caps can, if they don't have a top hole, the moisture can get trapped. So especially with tomatoes, like diseases, fungal stuff that can happen to your plants, those things can kind of make it a little harder. So, but if you're careful and you're getting it off really early in the morning, before the temperature starts to fluctuate and create that condensation in there, they're great tools. It's just knowing how to use the tool that you're implementing is really important.
It's going to be a really cold night. You can even use like a big coffee can over something, or something like that. Yes.
What about using row covers?
Row covers are great. They're labor intensive if you're a beginning gardener, I think. But I have used row covers more in the fall as a season extender than I have in the spring. But they're great in the spring too. And so yes. Row covers are like a paper, what's that stuff called?
There's different brands. There's like Remay and other.
Remay, yeah. It's a fabric.
It's a specially designed fabric. I've used row covers a lot in the spring, and I find them particularly good for things like spinach, maybe chard, things that you want to plant early. Because not only do they keep it a little warmer, but they protect them from the wind and the sun and heavy rainstorms, and they are more labor intensive, but I think they're great. And the fabric comes in different weights. You can get a summer weight because you can use them also to prevent certain insects from getting to crops if you use the summer weight roll cover. There's a heavy roll cover that you might use if you do fall or winter gardening. But they're great products. You have to get some kind of hoop system to use with them, but
And I don't know if Johnny sells it, but there's places online you could, as a beginning gardener, you could buy just a little tiny one. You know what I mean? Probably a little kit with some hoops and, you know, just this much for your 6 feet of it for your home garden. That's what I would invest in to begin with. Don't buy a huge row of Rime and think you're gonna, you know, cover 50 feet or something. Nope. Because I'd try that first to see if you like it. So I'm gonna go on now to.
We're not going far.
Okay. We talked about putting your plants in. There's another little chart here about direct seeding things.
Nope.
This would be when you can put your seeds in the soil.
You don't have to pee.
And Kathy's your thing covers this too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not
But it's
touching
just
right now.
another way of
Come on.
doing it. But this is totally by soil temperature. All right. So now I am going to give you my gardening secrets. Not all of them, but some of them. The first one is, how do I grow Brussels sprouts? Who's grown successful Brussels sprouts? 1, 2, oh, my husband, you don't count. All right. So at the community garden, I noticed that people really must like Brussels sprouts because they put them in their plots, and I don't go around judging people's plots, but the Brussels sprouts looked very sad, and except for mine and my husband's, I have to give him credit. So what do I do to get good Brussels sprouts? The key is timing. You do not put Brussels sprouts out when you plant your garden. You don't put them out when you put broccoli out. You don't put them out when you put your tomatoes out. I put my Brussels sprout plants out when I take my garlic out of my garden, which is around July 20th, 15th to 20th. And I start my Brussels sprout plants from seed outdoors May 30th. So those are the dates you want to remember. May 30th to seed and transplant the middle of July. And I'll tell you why. They don't like to grow and set those sprouts during the hot weather. And you're going to put them out. You're going to start them by seed, and you can start them outside by seed. You know, you can do it on your front stoop. Get a little, order some Brussels sprouts, go buy them somewhere. Just a tiny little seed starter thing. You don't need lights. You don't need to do it inside because by May 30th, it's warm enough you can start, do them outside. And so you're going to grow them for about 6 weeks, and then you're going to transplant them. You're going to be very discouraged because by the end of August, you're going to say, oh, they're not doing anything. They're so small. Of course, everybody else's Brussels sprouts have been eaten by the worms because they put them in way too early. But you are spraying yours with BT, so yours are looking good. And you know what? By Thanksgiving, they are amazing. And Brussels sprouts only get better after a freeze. And we harvested into February, our Brussels sprouts at the community garden. I had some I planted home in a raised bed, and we just harvested them. That was going a little too far. They were a little punky. I was like, oh, too bad. But it's the way to grow them. I guarantee you it's the way to grow them. Grow them as a late fall crop.
And I don't think you can get Brussels sprout plants.
You
in
can't.
January on
That's the
property,
problem. You've really
and
got to start them
they're
from your,
available when everything else is available, which is much more.
Oh,
and they don't know. They don't know. I mean, you know, that's because people buy them and they think, oh, well, they're selling them. I should put them in.
So the BT doesn't keep the worm away if you plant them early? Like if you spray them with the BT early, that's not as effective?
Oh, you have to spray BT
And how often?
on Brussels sprouts.
How often?
Well, or spinosad,
Yeah.
one or the other, to control the cabbage looper and the cabbage worms. They're the green cabbage worms.
Yes, that-
There's also a brown one that can attack, but it's usually here. It's the green cabbage loper, they call it. Looper.
Yeah.
Looper.
How often?
How often? You know what I do? And this isn't really the best way. When I start to see worms, I spray again.
Yeah.
But you got to look. They're very camouflaged on Brussels sprouts
Yeah,
under
they're
the
hard to
leaves.
see.
And they like to get in the meristem, the growing part of the top of the plant. They like to get themselves in there. So I would say every 10 days. And, you know, you want to spray, yeah, I mean, the eggplant, you want to spray your eggplant too for potato beetle. You know, the potato beetles go after your eggplant. And both the worms and the potato beetles they'll get knocked down by the spinosad or the BT. So you want to, yes, be on a schedule.
I mean, it goes after the broccoli, broccolini.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
all
you
that.
really cannot grow a cole crop without spraying the BT or the spinosad. It'll be so wormy. Yes. BT is an organic. It's called Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a certain race of Bacillus thuringiensis. I did a lot of research on this thing and did a lot of work with insect on cabbage plants, actually, trials on cabbage plants. It comes in different, dipel is one of its names, DIPEL, comes in different names. If you go to any garden store, they'll have it. Sometimes it's just Bacillus thuringiensis or BT or there's another thing called Monterey spray, Monterey something spray. What's the name of it? Has another name. That has spinosad in it, and that is also active against worms. Those are the two organic materials that are effective against the worm insects, and they are very effective. Sometimes organic materials are not effective, and you've got to really get after it. But BTs and the spinosads are very effective. So.
And we will talk a little bit more about that in session 2, because we're going to be talking about our favorite tools. We're going to be looking at our tools. Hopefully working on a tool sharpener to come. If not, we'll have cards and possibly a teacher that will help with how to sharpen your own tools at home. But tools like sprayers and the things that we use to do organic gardening will be part of that topic.
Yeah, I want to do a whole section on spraying, because I know a lot of people. How many of you are just kind of scared about spraying? I don't know what to do. I don't have a sprayer. I don't know what to do. I think you get over that mystery of it, and there are organic sprays that are good. They're safe.
Yeah.
And you don't need an expensive equipment, even just a little small spray bottle. But you don't need to spray anything yet, so don't worry about that yet. Okay, my next thing I'm going to tell you about my favorite tomatoes and why. What are my favorite tomatoes? I'm in love with pink Berkeley tie-dye. Maybe it's because I'm an old hippie or something, but I love pink Berkeley tie-dye and that whole series. It's by a guy out in California, and he's done a series of they're not heirlooms, but they're like heirlooms, and he's hybridized them, he's grown them and changed them, but they're like look it up. They're
in Johnny's.
They just got a lot to them. I love the dark tomatoes too. I like Cherokee Purple. They're one of the brownish red ones. You've seen those, right? I love Cherokee Purple. There's a Cherokee Green I really like. Cherry tomatoes, I really love something called White Cherry. It's in Johnny's. It's actually not white. It's a very, very pale yellow, but they call it White Cherry. I'm not really big on super sweet tomatoes, so I like Sun Golds, but I don't grow a lot of them. I like more tart, complex kind of tomatoes. But most people really they want sweet. That's what they want in their tomatoes, and I think that's great. And if you like that, I mean, there's nothing like those Sun Golds. They're like candy, right? So the other one that I really like is Green Zebra. It's a smaller sort of saladette kind of tomato, and it's green and it has yellow markings on it. I have a lot of favorites, but those are the ones that are in my favor right now. They get like first billing or something like that. I also try to grow a regular kind of burpee big boy or some kind of hybrid that may be better for disease resistance. If you want to grow a small saladette tomato for disease resistant, I would recommend Mountain Magic. It's a small tomato. You will have Mountain Magics into October after all your other tomatoes have gone down from their various blights. The only caveat, it doesn't taste as good. Hey, who's grown Mountain Magics? Yeah, they're great because they last, but believe me, they're better than the bullets in the supermarket come October. And if you let them ripen, you've got to let them really get ripe to get a lot of flavor out of them. So my husband doesn't like Mountain Magics. He doesn't, but I'm going to grow them, and then in October I'll be eating the tomatoes. I go, no. You go to the grocery store. No. All right, next thing. Garlic, when to plant. Okay, so I have a little hint. If you can get a hold of some soft neck garlic right now to plant, go online, go to there's a big garlic farm in Oregon called Fillory Garden Farm. Usually we have to plant hard neck garlic here because it just won't, the soft necks won't winter over well. But if that's when you're planting in the fall. But you could plant some soft necks right now, and you could have a crop by, I would say, the end of August. So if you didn't get any of your garlic in, you could try now. And the soft necks, why would you want to plant soft necks? The soft necks store much better than your hard necks. How many of you grew garlic? I've grown it. And by December or January, it's gone and it's not doing so well anymore, right? It doesn't store past then. But if you have a soft neck, you can really get it stored. You can go through May with your soft neck garlic. So that's a little hint. What can I plant right now, today, in my garden? What? Peas? It's too early. Too early. Because the soil temperature, everyone says you plant your peas by
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. No. If you plant your peas now, they are probably going to rot in the ground, or they're going to take 4 weeks or 3 weeks to germinate, if that. But most likely they're going to rot in the ground. The only thing, and I'm going to talk about peas, and it's a shortcut I took for them. I can plant right now something called mosh. It's called corn salad, V-I-T. Does anyone know it? It's a European green It's very popular in Europe in salads. And the soil temperature's good for mosh right now. And unfortunately, you would have to order it. You don't see mosh. It's M-A-C-H-E is how you spell it. You could plant that now. You could plant arugula now. If you have any arugula seeds, you could seed some arugula. It would probably come up.
Mine is lettuce.
Huh?
Mine is lettuce.
Yes, Claytonia. Claytonia, yes. You could probably do Claytonia also. Yes, and the mosh and the Claytonia go really well together. Peas, why do they not germinate if you put them in too early? Because they rot. That's what happens to them. Last year I thought, I'm going to try something. Because you have so many pea seeds, right? You get a bag of peas. You don't usually plant them all. You have them left over. So last year I took some little tiny peat pots and I started peas in the peat pots, thinking if I could get them to germinate inside and then go put them in the soil, could I have really early peas? It was my first year doing it. It does work. Because those peat pots, the reason you don't transplant peas is their roots, you don't want to disturb them. They have really fine, tiny root hairs. But those peat pots you can just kind of put in, right? Break them apart on the bottom a little bit. So I put them in. I would have had really good peas, except very early on there were cutworms in the garden. And but this year I'm going to protect but I'm going to try it again. I'm going to protect for the cutworms. So about now is when I would maybe start some peas in peat pots. Yes?
How do you protect against cutworms?
So cutworms. Diatomaceous earth will help, sprinkling it around. You want to get food grade diatomaceous earth. I think that's all they really sell in the garden centers. You don't want to use this stuff in your swimming pool. You want to use a food grade. Cutworms. The other thing people do is they make a little collar. You can make a little cardboard collar and put it around your plant, your transplant. There's other things.
Shotgun.
What?
Shotgun.
Shotgun. Yeah. Shotgun. You stay out in the night and shoot them. No. Yes, I didn't really think there was a cutworm problem in the garden until they got those peas. And cutworms, has anyone ever been cutwormed? Yeah. They're nasty. You know what they do? They just cut it off and leave it. And then go, and then they walk away. I mean, they don't even eat it,
It's the worst. You're like, at least have your lunch,
Yeah, right. So, all right. So that's my idea for peas. But by the end of the month, you could put them in. I mean, peas like, think about where you're planting when you're planting now for later. When you plan your garden, think about what's going to come out and later to extend in the season. Because you may want to, you're going to put your Brussels sprouts in July, right? Because you're all going to go buy Brussels sprouts and you're going to start them now. But you're going to need a place to put your Brussels sprouts in. So don't use your whole garden space up. Think about that as you're going on. The biggest detriment to eggplant transplants when you put them out, who grows eggplant? Maybe not too many. Are flea beetles, and everyone knows what flea beetles are. For some reason, eggplant are like a flea beetle magnet, those little kind of dots, little tiny little black beetles that go after them. And in the beginning, they can really overtake your transplant. Once they're established, it isn't as bad. And potato beetles will also go to your transplants. So there's the diatomaceous earth can help. There are things called pyganic. There's a OMRI. There's an organic one that can also help. But we'll talk about that later next session. Um,
I have a question on the diatomaceous earth. Do you sprinkle it on the plant or do you put it around it?
both. So, say for the cutworms, what you would want to do if you're using diatomaceous earth, I'd make a little ring around the plant, because the cutworms, they come in from the outside and they take it off. They don't come in from underneath. They march over and get it. So a little ring around it, a protective ring on the soil is what I would do for that.
So for flea beetles?
Flea beetles, I would put it all over the whole plant, and it does help with flea beetles. I mean, flea beetles they're a real problem, and they're certainly a problem at the garden.
The floating row cover, I've noticed in the
Yes.
spring, just a little loose layer even. And if your garden is near an edge of the forest, they go and overwinter there. So you're more likely to see them if you've got an edge to your garden near the woods.
That would be me.
Yeah, you're all woods.
Also, squash. We at the Tony Andrews, the Marina Garden, Andrews Garden, Community Garden, we've had a lot of problems with cucumber beetles, and they're not as bad as they used to be, because I think people started not growing cucumbers as much, but it was epidemic there. So, and it would go after the cucumbers and the zucchini, but seemingly the summer squash, the yellow squash, seemed to thrive okay at the community garden. It didn't seem to be hit as hard as the zucchini and the cucumber beetles. So, and one way to maybe help with your cucumbers, if you want to try to grow them there, I don't grow mine there anymore, I just grow them at home, but you could wait till the season's over, because cucumber beetles come in waves. I also bought something from Johnny's this year. I bought yellow sticky traps and cucumber lures. I want to see how they do on the cucumber beetles. What that is, it's a pheromone lure, and you put a yellow sticky trap by it, and they come over to near the sticky trap, and they get stuck on the sticky trap because they go after the lure. It's the same thing with those Japanese beetle traps. Have you seen those? But there's two schools of thought on those too, because sometimes they bring them in, and they're like, oh, what's this? And I never was here before. Oh, they're feeding me here or something. So, all right, that's it. I'm sure people want to get out of here and go garden. Carrots. You could plant carrots, but really you need the soil temperature at 50. But that could be in a week, so you could get some carrots in maybe in a week. One other thing I would like to mention is on May 18th at the fairgrounds, the Master Gardeners of Cape Cod, of which we are members, hold an enormous plant sale there. It starts at 9, does it, in the morning?
It starts at 9, but it's a good idea to get there early, because by 9 o'clock, there's a big, long line. So you want to be one of the first ones in. You might even try to get there at 8.
It's well attended and tons of plants. At May 18. Fabulous tomato plants. For very inexpensive, and unusual varieties, like you'd be able to get things you would not be able to get other places. They're all grown by the Master Gardeners. Yes.
There's a flyer on the table you
Yes.
can take. If you came in late, there's a table with
There's a
all of
flyer
the dates for the rest of the sessions, and we'll be putting those out. Coffee shops, they're going to be on our website, and we'll be sending emails out. I wanted to say something that Lenny made me think of when he's saying about the starts. Now, as a gardener farmer, I cannot urge you enough to not buy plants just because they're out. All right?
Yes.
Walmarts, Stop and Shops, job lots, don't buy plants just because they're there. They do a great disservice to gardeners because they get you excited about planting tomatoes because they're there and they look so great, right? But what you're getting is like a root-bound thing that was grown down south that has been sprayed with who knows what, that you might not want to mess with because, like Warren said, it's temperature. It's these more intuitive things than anybody trying to make a profit off you is going to do. So don't be tempted. Mahoney's, go to real garden centers that have real educated people that aren't just throwing them at you to get you excited, and then you'll put them in, you'll fail, you'll be sad about gardening. It's not your fault. But, you know, those sorts of things. And then encourage your garden centers. If you want fall gardens and you want fall transplants, it's one of those things that I've always seen the void here, is you can't get fall crops, you can't get late lettuces, you can't get late spinach. These things that would be helpful to have starts. If you don't have a good start set up in your house or you're not just in that mode. So urge them to say, I want late Brussels sprouts, or like I want to put my onion bulbs in for next year. Like there's things you can do, and we'll keep talking about that through the sessions, how you can extend your garden season, what to think about next. And so those sorts of things.
Yeah, one thing that's been totally amazing to me, I've been a lifelong gardener, and growing here on Cape Cod has been so cool because of our fall. It's like a whole season, you know, and sometimes we don't have a frost here till November. Even though you look at these frost days, that's why I'm saying I watch when we have these frosts, and you can grow, you know, you can plant some beans in the end of August and get green beans, and people don't realize that. On the opposite side, we have a cold spring. In the Hudson Valley, we used to get our tomato plants out like May 5th, you know, outside and growing. I wouldn't think of that here. One other thing I want to warn you about, basil. Don't get your basil in early. You will regret it, and it will be like your peppers. It will suffer for the rest of your season. So I would wait until June 5th, or you look at your long-term, you know, temperature, what it's like, but basil does not like cold, and I don't mean frost, I mean cold,
I have a question about basil too. You know how it'll come in a pot and it'll be a whole, like, bush of basil, all put together, bunch of little seeds that, you know, like little plants.
I separate them.
So they're different plants, and whenever I separate them and put them in separate pots, they pass out.
Oh, well.
Is that what you're supposed to do, or?
Well, yeah, I mean,
if I leave them together, they seem to do better.
Well, then do what it seems to do better. I mean, I kind of like bigger basil plants, because if I go to make pesto or something, I like them big and chop them down and grow them.
But you're supposed to separate them, right?
Well,
depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
If you want little bits of basil in a nice neat row versus a clump.
I separate them.
Yeah, I think
just tease them apart really carefully. The other thing you can do is take 4 or 5 of them, because there's so many, right? And you don't need all those plants. You could cut the top off. When you're trying to thin something like that, don't pull them apart. Cut the top off of one. Because what you're doing when you pull them apart is you're disturbing all the roots of all of them. And it's those little tiny, tiny roots that are so important, the ones you can't see. And that's what you're doing. You see, so if you cut them off.
basil also roots pretty easily. So if you cut the top off, you can put it in a glass of water on your windowsill and it'll grow new roots before too long, and then you can plant that too.
Yes.
On a positive gardening note, rhubarb is coming up.
Good. Yay.
Great.
That's it.
I will say one thing we didn't mention was, like, is anybody starts at home already? People have, setups going, or you're going to? One of the things I find that people do when they're first starting out, that it's almost like it's one of those things you can not think of, and then when it's a problem, always put a fan on once in a while. So if you have a very still house, imagine your plants are growing up in this very still environment, and then you go and throw them to the wind. So at the beginning, you can get leggy, just having a little thing to toughen them up every once in a while. I put an oscillating fan on mine,
Good idea.
and it helps sturdy their cell walls up so they can stand up like good soldiers, So just
And you've
Little
got to
tips.
harden them off too. You can't just take them from your warm house and stick them in the ground. You've got to take them out a few days, bring them in at night, put them out. You know what hardening off it's called. And the ones that you would get, say at Mahoney's that have been outside, they would have been hardened off already. But ones you're growing in your house, you have to harden off. You can't just stick them right in the ground.
I always fail at hardening off. So I love to start things with seed, but then I lose half. Just by
When you harden them off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't put them in direct sunlight. I'll put them on my back deck more in direct light for like an hour and bring them back in. But I think I'm doing it too early.
And they die?
Yeah, I lose them.
Are they wilting?
Well, yeah, they're like in shock. And I follow every guideline everybody says. I just don't know.
Because I put mine out.
Pots
I put it. You want a little sun.
Little pots.
Oh, if you start tomatoes at
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
once they get about that tall, maybe you wanna pop them up to something larger so their roots can expand. And if the pot's too small, it might be just heating up and drying out too quickly.
What if you want some for like hardening off for a time?
Well, it depends on the temperature, and I would harden off for a week, gradually.
An hour at a time, or like put them out for an hour, a couple hours? Like,
Yeah, start, and then
I'll see you next
then I
time.
put them
Michael.
out all day and bring them in at night, and then I put them out.
I planted a couple of grapevines. I didn't let them.
Thank you all.
The later part of the season, I started to get this change mostly near the bottom of the plant.